Hi, I'm Michael, and as you might recall, in my first TED Talk, I talked about motivation and improving upon that unique desire that we have to better ourselves. Well, in this talk, I'll be talking about expectations, almost in the same matter, but it's like flipping the coin to the other side. In this talk, I wish to argue that it is our expectations that have the biggest impact on how we act and how we feel towards different things. And depending on our unique expectations, we can have very, very different reactions and feelings towards almost the same thing, again, depending on who we are and what our expectations are. As a college student, I know a lot about expectations, both for myself and for the future I have in college. When I go visit college campuses, I can have very different expectations depending on what the campuses are like. If I go to a college that I very much like the campus, that's going to have different expectations than a college that the campus just doesn't really feel right to me. That's not to say that my expectations are going to be very low for that other college. It's just different colleges and different campuses create different feelings inside me, which thus have different expectations. One of the most important things to understand about expectations is the huge difference between large expectations and smaller expectations. Smaller expectations could be something as trivial as daily homework or daily activities in class, such as small quizzes or different grades. Depending on how I feel after taking a quiz or making a project, if my grade does not reflect that emotion or thought I had before, my expectations are not going to be met. And although that's not a huge expectation, it does create some feelings inside me of disappointment and kind of curiosity of how my expectations weren't met. But with larger expectations, such as a final in a class or some final project or a huge test, if I get something back that's totally different from my expectations, it's going to create a very palpable and very big emotion in me. And depending on if it's good or bad, that can create very different scenarios. And I believe, especially for younger people my age and below, these expectations, as good as they can be for motivating us to do better, if you work motivation in there, these expectations can also have some very almost negative impacts on us. Such as if there's some, it can be abstract or real, like some kind of car that you really want and you've been looking for and you've been looking forward to have for several years, and you dream about the moment when you can finally drive it. When you finally do get that car, the expectations might not be met. And depending upon if that's a positive thing with the expectations or a negative thing, that can have very, very important connections and aspects towards your feelings about that car. And this kind of scenario can be applied to many different things. And one scenario would be college, going back to my experiences. And it doesn't have to be me or some student you know, it could be anybody. If any particular high school student has very high expectations for some certain college, and they know in their mind it's that college they want to go to, and they've applied there, and for many weeks and months they've thought like, oh, if I can only get into that college, I'm dreaming about going to that college, that's the college I want to go to. If they do not get accepted into that college, it can have very negative impacts upon their future college searches. That's not to say that they shouldn't have expectations to want to go to a college and want to have a college that they can really, really like. It's just depending on how massive those expectations are towards one certain thing, that can create almost a negative impact on every other thing. That particular student might not get into their first choice that they really, really wanted to go to, but that doesn't mean that in a couple months they'll get accepted to another college, go to that college, and find out that that's the perfect college that they really, really need to be going to. And that goes back to my main argument about how different expectations can have different impacts on different things. But even though those different expectations have different aspects, the one main idea of all of expectations is that it is purely your expectations that can have the biggest impact upon your life. And just depending on how big or small your expectations are, there will be different impacts on your life from those expectations. If there is one thing that I would want you to take from this talk, it would be to just remember what expectations really mean. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any large expectations for life, or that you shouldn't have or shouldn't be excited for certain things. It just means that those expectations do have a significant impact on your life. And so if you or someone you know has very large and almost seemingly unhealthy expectations for something, it would just be good to remind them or remind yourself that it's those expectations that could have the biggest impact on that aspect of their life. And although you might know that there's one thing out there that you really want, it's good to just have different expectations for different things, because again, it is those expectations that can have the biggest impact on those certain aspects in your life. Thank you.